Lovely. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. I'll be chairing this meeting. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. Public seating has been made available. Can I please ask members and officers to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting? And some housekeeping information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble near Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including those making deputations. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts this meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use their microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. We've all read the report, so officers, please just highlight any developments that have occurred since publication. So let's do some introductions. My left in the front, Councillor Heaney.
I'm Councillor Graham Heaney. I'm the Labour Group spokesperson on traffic and transportation.
Thank you. Tristan.
Tristan Samuels, I'm the Director of Regeneration.
Thank you. Scott.
Councillor Scott Pater Harris, I am the Conservative spokesperson on traffic and transportation.
Wayne.
I'm Wayne Layton, I'm Finance Manager here at Portsmouth City Council.
Hello, I'm Michelle Love, I'm the Safer Travel Manager for Portsmouth City Council.
Paul Darlow, Traffic and Network Manager, Portsmouth City Council.
Kevin McKee, Parking Manager, Portsmouth City Council.
Denise Bastow, Parking Office Manager, Portsmouth City Council.
Hello, good afternoon. Erica Stiles, Engagement Officer for Transport Delivery.
Felicity Tibbury, Acting Assistant Director of Transport, Portsmouth City Council.
Gareth James, Future Transport Zone Project Manager for Solent Transport at Portsmouth City Council.
Hayley Chivers, Acting Transport Planning Manager, Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you. Now to the other side. Mark.
Yeah, I'm Mark Jeffrey, Councillor for St Thomas Ward.
Mr Dobson.
Mike Dobson, representing the Portsmouth Cycle Forum.
Councillor Simon Bosher, Conservative Group Leader.
I'm Peter Sutherland. I'm the Trade Representative for Uber Drivers in Portsmouth.
Thank you. Have I covered everybody? Have I missed anybody out? No? Okay. I think we... Sorry. Oh, my apologies. Yes. Nikki.
Nikki Humphreys, Licensing Manager for Portsmouth City Council.
Jane Dodino, Local Democracy Officer.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to change the order of the agenda slightly because there are more people here interested in the PHV trial, so I think we'll start with that one first and then we'll go back to item 1 afterwards. So who is presenting that? Is that you, Paul? Thank you.
The purpose of this report is to provide an update on the changes to the private hire vehicles in bus lanes trial following the decisions taken by the Traffic and Transportation Cabinet meeting on the 13th of December 2021. The report details the changes and the justifications for these amendments and outlines the new recommendations being put forward. Since December, work has progressed on the development of the trial, including the setup of a group of stakeholders that are being consulted as part of the trial, an assessment of the bus lanes to be put forward for the trial, and road safety audits on those shortlisted. The recommendations are that we undertake a trial in 5 bus lanes, which are Cavell Drive, Market Way, Mile End Road, Bishop Crispian Way and Queen Street. And it's also recommended that the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation has delegated authority to cease any or all of the 5 trial locations if safety issues become apparent. The authorities delegated to the Director of Regeneration in consultation with the Cabinet member and a Section 151 officer to release funding to undertake the monitoring and evaluation of the trial as the details are developed, and this will be funded from the parking reserve. Also, that it's noted that consultation engagement will continue with the licensing committee and working group as the trial develops, and that finally a report will be brought back to Traffic and Transportation within 6 months of the trial launch to provide an update on the trial progress and next steps.
Thank you.
Chair, may I interrupt one moment, please? Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry?
May I ask you for agenda item members' interests, any
I can't hear you,
declarations? Sorry, declarations of members' interests.
Oh, I forget my head if it wasn't fast. Yes, sorry, Councillor Heaney.
It's not so much an interest, Chair. I just want to make note that obviously the report that we're discussing now makes reference to the licensing committee, of which I am the chair.
Right, thank you. I don't think we need to have Councillor Bowship and Councillor... No, because you're just making deputations. Right, thank you. Thank you, Jane. We have 2 deputations, I think, in person. So I think Peter Sutherland, would you like to speak? You have a maximum of 6 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of my colleagues sitting above me, I would just like to thank all the council officers that have managed to leave their homes and attend. I don't think I've seen so many council officers in one place since the work from home policy came in. Congratulations and thank you. For the proposal allowing the trial for access to private hire vehicles to bus lanes is a matter that I proposed to the licensing committee almost 3 years ago, and it was unanimously approved and to be put forward to Traffic and Transportation. Now, people will put their hands up and scream COVID, but I do say 3 years ago. Prior to me presenting this 3 years ago, I know other people have also tried to raise this subject, but to no avail. So here we find ourselves 3 years later, and we're still prevaricating, or you are still prevaricating. In fact, I'm sure that the definition for prevarication in the dictionary probably says see Portsmouth City Council. It goes on and on. Now, I'm for the trial. I proposed that we have the access to the bus lanes, so I'm for the trial if that's the way to get through to it. But I have some serious concerns and minor complaints, if you like, about how this matter has been handled. In fact, I've grown old watching this council discuss this thing, and I'll probably be retired before it comes into place, if it ever does, because I have a feeling that you're going to find a reason not to. Item 3.3 in your report mentions that the city has 53 bus lanes. I wonder if somebody please could take note that I would like to see a detailed map of all 53 bus lanes. Thank you. Item 3.5 in your report mentions that cyclists and e-scooters have access to these bus lanes. Just note that this is despite neither group passing any sort of proficiency test, and the numbers that have the access are totally unknown, and yet you throw your arms up in horror at the very thought of skilled professional private hire vehicle drivers having access. Over us, you would have some control. Over them, you have no control. 3.8 in your report talks of concern raised by stakeholders. Well, I don't know who exactly these mysterious stakeholders are or what the concerns are. I, as a representative of a large group of stakeholders, have never met any of these concerned individuals, never been invited to a meeting with them, never had the opportunity to share and understand their concerns, or for them to understand ours. They remain in the shadows, and any possibility of meaningful dialogue has been totally ignored. I ask why. I ask what these people are afraid of. Our proposal is clear. Our argument is watertight. As mentioned in the report, access to bus lanes by passenger-carrying private hire vehicles provides a more efficient service to the public, cuts down on journey times, and allows some 750 plus licensed vehicles on the private hire side of the city to keep moving rather than be sitting static in traffic in key areas in the CAS zone, and contributing towards pollution. It simply must make sense. Now, to me, a humble private hire driver, it would seem that the Department for Traffic and Transportation is very much against the idea and seems to be putting every obstacle in our way, every obstacle you can possibly dream up. I've attended the meeting, I've given you the information that was later overturned, and it's simply not true. I've been given information that has been, shall we say, misleading at previous meetings, or simply didn't happen. But now we're talking about a trial at a cost to the public purse, as I read in the notes, of some £60,000. And for what? You're going to waste £60,000 monitoring a trial, professional vehicles using access to private hire, to bus lanes in this city. Yet every other city around us, if you take Southampton, for example, a much bigger city, can manage this project without any issues. I don't know why this is such a concern. I want the trial to go ahead because it seems to be the only way we can move forward. But on a broader scale, I want and urge you to consider full access to all bus lanes in the city, with one or two exceptions, such as Hilsey Roundabout and the bottom of the motorway. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sutherland. Mr. Dobson.
Madam Chair, good afternoon. The Portsmouth Cycle Forum strongly objects to this scheme. You and councillors have document packs, and I'll ask you to refer to document number 1. This is the input provided by the Cycle Forum to the Council in February following the first meeting of the stakeholder group. The final page lists 8 key issues. The Council addressed only 4 of them, and all the safety concerns have been ignored. I ask you to look at paper 2. This is an email from Hayley Trower sent on 17th of March. She wrote, "We will be in touch to let you know the details of the revised trial when they are developed, and will be seeking your input going forward." On page 2 at the bottom, the project manager says, "Please be advised that the Portsmouth Cycle Forum's concerns have been received, and we are working to provide you with a response as soon as possible." Neither officer got in touch, and the council has not sought input. Document 3 is your email to me on the 17th of March, in which you assured me that our concerns would be considered and you hope to come up with a solution. Well, you haven't. The council report on stakeholder engagement lists those that the council has engaged with: the bus companies, Aquacars, obviously Uber, and others in the private hire trade, but there's no mention of engaging with cyclists. Section 10 of the appendix gives a legal framework. It omits the crucial legal point made in February that the Highway Authority appears to be neglecting its statutory duty under the Road Traffic Act 1988, Section 39, to maintain a duty of care for all road users. The only safety measure planned by the council is to check monthly the number of so-called accidents reported to the police. In other words, a cyclist actually has to be knocked off his or her bike in order for the incident to be recorded. Please look at document number 4, which is an example of an intimidating close pass by a minicab on a cyclist in a bus lane. Why does the council consider it unnecessary to record the incidents where cyclists have been subjected to near misses and unsafe driving? Document 5 is an example of how cyclists could add to the incident reporting. In February, we asked for comprehensive safety assessment, addressing the core concern that the trial needs to reflect the highway code changes for drivers to leave at least 1.5 metres clearance when overtaking cyclists. Either drivers will respect that 1.5 metres clearance and will have to move into the outside lane, causing conflict and delay with other motorists, or they will disregard the requirement and squeeze past cyclists, creating a close pass incident. When humans are used in medical trials, it's a requirement to seek consent from volunteers. An independent ethics board reviews the trial plan to ensure that all safety issues are addressed. This hasn't been done. Please look at document number 6. This is a Royal Society for Prevention of Accidents summary of the cost of serious and fatal injuries. To add to the human cost, ROSPA has calculated the financial cost of a road fatality as being over £4 million. Noting Portsmouth's appalling death toll in the last 12 months of 8 pedestrians killed by motorists, it seems that the Council has got a very high tolerance for road fatalities and is indifferent about the prospect of cyclist casualties. Would you please look at the integrated impact assessment? On page 75, the point of contact is given as Hayley Trower. I thought she'd left the Council. Further down, it lists for transport Pam Turton. I know she's left the Council. And just below her name, it lists LTP3. Well, I think we're on LTP4. So when officers can't keep track of staff changes and list a superseded transport planning document, how do you expect the public to have confidence that they're competent to plan a trial that inherently poses risk to vulnerable road users? A core principle of sound decision-making is evidence-based decision-making, but it seems the Council is engaged in decision-making evidence ignoring. The Council's failure to include the Cycle Forum input from February and the broken promises to engage are contrary to the fourth gunning principle established in case law in 1985, that consultees must be assured that their evidence has been taken into account. Hence, a court is likely to consider this a breach of common law, which could be the basis for a judicial review. To summarise the numerous failings: ignoring the Transport Department guidance that minicabs should not be allowed to use bus lanes, failure to fulfil the legal requirement to engage in meaningful consultation, failure to reply to input, bias in engaging with the minicab trade but ignoring cyclists, failure to address the safety issues, ignoring the overarching legal obligation to exercise a duty of care for all road users. There seems to be an attitude that vested interests must be pandered to and cyclists are merely potential roadkill. I summarise this trial in 2 words: callous indifference. My conclusion is not a threat, but a frank reminder of the consequences. The documentation provides a comprehensive audit trail that the Council has failed to address the safety issues. If seriously injured, the cyclist will have ample grounds to sue the Council for corporate negligence. And if the cyclist is killed, the bereaved will have ample grounds to sue the Council for corporate manslaughter. If those tragic incidents occur and litigation is taken, the list of witnesses from the Council will include Lynn Stagg, Tristan Samuels, Felicity Tidbury, Florence Hickling, and Scott Pater Harris. If you're confident that the Council has fulfilled its legal obligations, that the trial plan is sound, and that it's been unnecessary to consider the Cycle Forum's inputs and concerns about safety, then I expect you will approve this. But if you have reservations, I strongly recommend that you delay a decision and you direct your officers to engage with the Cycle Forum so that the inputs of all stakeholders are considered.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Would the officers like to answer some of the points that Mr. Dobson has made before I come to councillors? Are you happy with that, Councillor Pater Harris? And you? Okay.
And Mr. Sutherland made some points as well, which they might want to respond to.
Pardon?
Mr. Sutherland made some points as well, which they might want to respond to.
Yes.
No, I agree with that, Chair, as well.
I should say as well, there have been some written deputations as well, which don't need to be read out. But one comes from the Gosport Cycle Forum. I think it's the Cycle Forum. But so who's going to answer some of the points? Can you speak into the mic clearly?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have conducted some engagement with stakeholders where...
I don't know if people can hear well enough. I certainly can't.
Oh.
Yes, can you speak up but closer to the mic?
We've consulted with stakeholders at points where we have needed to consult with them in order to make recommendations to this report. We have liaised with Aquacars and the bus trade, as mentioned, in order to get their agreements to submit data as part of the trial to enable us to monitor it in a fair way. Stakeholder engagements were always planned to pick up following this meeting once a decision has been made on the proposals that we put forward in an attempt to discuss proposals that are less likely to change or subject to the possibility of changing. We have tried our best to look into safety concerns raised and have reviewed comments that have been submitted previously closely. We initially looked at all of the bus lanes which were put forward, and we tried to reduce them in number by looking at bus lanes that had available monitoring equipment already in place. We then proceeded to look at each of those bus lanes individually and compare them against accident data to try and avoid accident hotspots within the city. We then looked at other factors such as road speed, and we was left with a short list of 6 bus lanes, one of which had to be removed from the initial trial because of potential confusion due to unloading and loading, which would have made it difficult for us to monitor the trial as planned, which left us with the 5 remaining bus lanes.
Thank you. Has anybody got any comments on anything that Mr. Sutherland said? Were there any questions, Mr. Sutherland, you wanted to ask and have an answer to?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't realise you were addressing me. I still fail to understand why some of the bus lanes in question can't be opened up. Winston Churchill Avenue, for example, the northbound bus lane at Hilsey from the Coach and Horses up to Hilsey all the way up to Hilsey roundabout. It's a straight run. I don't see the difficulties. It's just I don't see why southbound we can't open up the bus lanes again from the Coach and Horses down through North End. To me, none of it makes a lot of sense,
So
Chair.
is that a question to the officers?
Yeah, I can't understand why they can't open them up. I'd like them to explain why.
Yes, fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Can one of the officers answer that? Thank
Yes, certainly. So the bus lanes that you mentioned in particular there, all of them were originally discounted when we was looking to put together a much reduced, more monitored trial. They don't have available infrastructure for us to monitor. Winston Churchill Avenue did, but that the enforcement camera that was located there, it's been proposed that that's moved elsewhere. So those were originally looked at, but they weren't included in the shortlist due to the lack of monitoring equipment available at those locations.
Thank you. Councillor Heaney.
Well, I'm going to ask questions, really. Yes? Good. How many local authorities have got PHVs in bus lanes at the moment? And do we know what sort of authorities they are? Are they big city authorities? And how long have those been in operation? Are we talking about very recent, or have they been operating for some years?
Do any of the officers have the answer to that? Felicity?
Yeah, so following the decision that was made on the 13th of December last year, we did write to every single local highway authority to understand if they allow private hire vehicles in their bus lanes. We actually only received a couple of responses back. So we understand that Reading Borough Council undertook a trial in 2013. However, the bus travel time savings and reliability benefits affected the use of the bus lane, and therefore the PHVs were removed. However, subsequently, they've actually allowed a limited number of bus lanes to be used. So that was Reading. Southampton City Council do allow private hires in all bus lanes. And Brighton and Hove also share their bus lanes with private hire vehicles. Our neighbouring authorities of Hampshire County Council and West Sussex County Council don't allow any private hire vehicles in any of their bus lanes.
Thank you. Councillor Heaney. Do you have any further questions?
Yes, I do. Could you explain a bit more clearly what the monitoring is going to be? Are all the bus lanes going to be monitored by 24-hour cameras? And how is the other monitoring going to be done? Is it going to be people counting or electronic, or how is the usage going to be monitored?
Thank you. Paul.
So in 5.1, we've got the key performance indicators that we'll be using. And firstly, as has already been mentioned, is about the accident data, which Hampshire Constabulary have undertaken to send us on a monthly basis, which is a bit more frequent than we get at the moment. Bus service providers and PHV providers to present pre-trial and during trial journey time data for analysis. We've also got journey time analysis on the routes on those roads as part of our network journey time analysis that we can look at to see if there's any impact on other traffic. We're also doing some junction performance monitoring to see if actually there's any impact on junctions from the trial. So, for example, things like Bishop Crispian Way and Queen Street, the buses there trigger the traffic signals there. So if we've got increased numbers of vehicles there, that could change the performance of that junction. The parking enforcement team will be looking at and providing data on the during pre-trial and during the trial, about contraventions for enforcement for bus lanes. And also we are procuring a number of air quality monitors which can actually put along those routes both before and during to see if there's any change to air quality at all. But they're the key performance indicators that would be used.
Thank you, Paul.
I had a specific question about Bishop Crispian Way because I was informed that that particular route is one where people frequently drive on it when they shouldn't do, i.e. ordinary cars. How much of that is a problem? Is it a very frequent? I was told quite a number of notices, spelling notices have been issued for that particular route.
I should imagine the ANPR cameras would pick that up, wouldn't they? Denise?
Yeah, it is one of the locations where we do issue it is one of the locations where we do issue quite a high proportion of penalty charge notices. They're usually one-off vehicles rather than the same vehicles going through, and it's just an area that actually does elicit quite a high number of vehicles using that as a cut-through when they're coming in the city, either coming up from south of the city and cutting across or coming down southwards. So yes, it is an area that does have a high issue of notices.
Thank you. Going to go over to Scott now and come back to you if there's any more. Scott. Okay,
we might be here for a while. Obviously, the question I was going to follow up on, because obviously they answered that question, was I didn't know the answer. So how come that didn't affect the trial? Because if you've got lots of other vehicles using it, surely that's going to cause a bit of a problem for a trial when you're trying to use PHVs using that. So what?
I think, didn't Paul cover that by, or was it Paul, and it might not have been, by saying they wanted to use 5 different routes with different conditions. So that's why that particular one was chosen.
Yes, but as you will know, at the briefing meeting where we had a preview of this report, I asked why the London Road route, which is a through route, wasn't used as a trial, because it seemed to be one of the important ones to test out, and I was told it wasn't going to be used because of safety concerns.
Following a review of the accident data available, London Road was originally discounted due to the number of incidents that have occurred at that location. Of course, there may be some confusion with Bishop Crispian Way, and that is one of the things we'll be keeping an eye out on, is whether there is an increase in contraventions as a result of the trial. However, it's not a safety concern as much as it is a confusion item.
Am I wrong in thinking as well that with Bishop Crispian Way, it's the congestion and the pollution that is the major problem there? No? Okay, sorry, I thought it was.
I think Bishop Crispian, the road is relatively lightly trafficked other than buses at the moment. Which is why it obviously cuts across the main route into the city and down to Gunwharf. So that's one of the reasons why we'll be looking at the journey time and that congestion issue, because more traffic down there will trigger the signals more times, so it could cause an issue. So that's a relatively good example of, I suppose, a bus route with PHVs in it crossing a main route and potentially causing disruption to other traffic. I think the 5 that we've got are a variety of bus routes, and probably, there's a good set in there that if we were looking to extend the trial any more, that would give us a good flavour for different types of bus lane across the city that we could then use to sort of extrapolate some of the data maybe we've got, and make that assessment of whether they're suitable or not.
Thank you, Paul.
You'll be relieved that I've only got 2 more questions, then I'll shut up. On 6.3, you talk about additional engagement and consultation will take place with all stakeholders on the details of the trial. I think what slightly disconcerted the Cycle Forum, and I have no problem with the buses and the private hire vehicles tax trade being involved, but why have you left it apparently quite late to involve the Cycle Forum, and also the company that runs the e-scooters, because they will have an interest in this as well, and I don't think they've been consulted about the details of this trial from what I can read from the report. So it's a question of why leave them till the last to consult
Erica, I think, has
when you
the
actually
answer
made
to
the
that.
decision, rather than talk to them before you made the decision.
I think it was data collection, but I may be wrong. Erica.
Yes, just to reiterate, I'm the engagement officer, and I was brought in mainly as a result of my previous work on the Clean Air Zone, liaising with the private hire and taxi trade. So my remit was very much to focus on those particular stakeholders, and the project manager at the time, and Mr. Dobson, you did quite rightly mention that the project manager has now left and now been replaced by Liam. So we've been working together to pick things up since Liam joined the team. So my focus was very definitely on the private hire and taxi trade, being that that was the group that I was previously working with. Having said that, I was in attendance on the external review panel in January, where concerns were raised. I recall Mr. Dobson attending and then subsequently submitting their concerns. And as a result, I believe, not just from those concerns, but that's when the trial was postponed. So at that point, my remit was to pause, let people know that it wasn't happening, but then to re-engage with an increased number of stakeholders once it was now back on the table, as it were. I hope it's okay to use that kind of phrasing. So at this point, where we're actually now looking to proceed with a greatly adjusted trial to take into account those concerns, would be the point that we would reconvene that external review panel and add additional stakeholders where possible to ensure that everyone is informed and has an opportunity to air their concerns again.
Thank you. Any more? One more.
My last question is relating to how this goes forward, because we've got a trial which is going to last for a period of time, and there will be some results from that trial. Now, obviously, we don't know what the results will be, but let us assume for the moment that the trials are successful. How is the rollout then going to be considered? Is it going to be done on a lane-by-lane, case-by-case basis with a safety audit, or is it going to be a more general opening up of lanes based on the trial? My sort of supplementary to that is, if one of the trial sites proves to be a problem, would that be withdrawn and not included? And in a sense, it's Mr. Sutherland's point. Are we actually going to have a situation where we'll have a mix and match scenario where some bus lanes will be open, maybe a few more will be open, but it won't necessarily be all? So I'm looking at the sort of the future strategy. I know we can't determine exactly what it will be, but I want to know how it's going to be handled, if you know what I mean.
Who's going to answer that one? Paul?
So in terms of timescales, what we're proposing is September's used for a capture of baseline data, and the trial would then start early October. A month in from that into November, we're going to start seeing our first set of meaningful data that we can actually compare with the baseline. What our intention is, as soon as we've got that meaningful data, would be to compile an interim report, give an update on how things are going, and if there's any particular issues with any one of the 5 bus lanes, obviously that is within your gift Councillor Stagg to say, okay, I'm not happy with that one continuing, and to stop that one, and that's one of the recommendations. In 7.5, we do report on that and say, based on the reports, and reporting back to the working group as well with the stakeholders, consideration could be given to extending the trial further to other bus lanes in a phased approach, but they would all have a safety audit undertaken, and that would be subject to satisfactory resolution of any issues. And any further phases would be brought back to TNT via report for approval.
Thank you. Can I just point out here as well, the bus lanes were originally intended to make faster movement of buses, or at least less congested routes. The buses could have a swifter sort of movement through. And by having too many things, vehicles, whatever they are, in the bus lane can actually affect that, slow it down. We've just won a bid for £48.3 million for bus service improvement plan. And one of the things in that is improved bus services, so improved speed. And I think we're looking at possible saving of 10 minutes on buses coming from Lee Park, for example. So we really want to keep that. So it is safety, yes, obviously, but also we need to remember what the bus lanes are meant for. So, Councillor Peter Harris.
Just on that point that you just made, Chair, that's not part of the recommendation. Bus timings doesn't form part of the delegated authority. The delegated authority is purely around on safety grounds. It can be pulled, not on bus timings.
Yes, I agree, but it's one of many considerations. It's not just one.
I know it's not part of one of the considerations. What I'm saying is, if you were to say to pull this midway through and citing bus timings, you would be in a predicament, because that is not what this report is based on. I think you need to choose your words carefully when you read the recommendation in the report.
Well, we are monitoring bus speeds anyway, or the length of time.
Yeah, I understand that, but that's not what the recommendation says. The recommendation points.
No, but I'm not saying that it's a recommendation. What I'm saying is that was another concern that we took into account.
But
so I'm trying to show that we actually looked at every aspect of using the bus lanes.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just want to make that point that it's not in the recommendation. I just don't want you to get into a situation where we pull it on that reasoning and it's not actually for that reason. If you get what I'm saying, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm being nice. On that point, I just want to address the comments made by Mr. Dobson. I was quite alarmed. I don't meet someone first time and get threatened by them. So, if you want to have a chat with me after the meeting, I'm more than open to talking to you about cycling. It may surprise you, but there's a big bike shop on the corner of Elm Grove that's been in my family for about 40 years. You might know of it. So that might be my history around cycling. I'm just going to make note, actually. You made a comment about PHVs putting out onto traffic to give way to cyclists at 1.5 metres. Well, that would be the same as the buses, surely, that would give... Would that be the same for the buses, having to give 1.5 to put out in the bus lanes? Am I right in that? I'm not doing it for applause, but I just think the logic in that is, can anyone tell me on this side of the chamber if I'll be right in that instance? Would a bus have to give 1.5 metres for a cyclist?
I can answer that question for you, Councillor.
So if a cyclist is travelling in front of a bus, then if at all possible, according to the highway code, then yes, the bus would need to give that amount of road.
Thank you. I thought that was
But the onus would be that actually the bus would, if necessary, hold back. So it would have to be on a case-by-case basis.
As I'm sure a PHV would do the same.
Pardon
I
me?
hope so. As I'm sure a PHV vehicle would do the same. I'm speculating. What I'm going to note is that Mr. Dobson's created a good pack, and it is a really good pack, and I asked for 10 minutes at the start to read it. And you made reference to, I think, let's go to actually page, well, it's after page 3 in your pack. Actually, no, it's page 4 in your pack. And you make reference to an incident where a PHV driver in a bus lane uses a horn to intimidate a cyclist, high speed, close pass, passenger shouts at cyclist. You know, I understand that. And the incident was reported to the licensing office, who investigated and took appropriate action against the driver. Because I'm going to speak to with my licence hat on. If that does happen, the licensing team will take action. You know, and in this instance, it would probably be 6 points on the driver's licence, or they would be hauled before committee if there was an accident occurred from that. And that's the right thing to do. Where the maximum penalty for a driver causing an accident could be revocation of their licence, loss of their livelihood, for example. So with the greatest respect, there are things in place from that point of view as well. If you don't mind, I'm just going to go through to the report now. I think I've got those bits out of the way. 2.1 on the report. So this allows a trial to access Portsmouth City vehicles, a limited number of 5 bus lanes, which are Cavill Drive, Market Way, Mile End Road, Bishop Crispin Way and Queen Street. Can someone clarify for me and make sure that this is going to be for only Portsmouth registered vehicles, just so we've got that on the record? It's going to be Portsmouth registered vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, and it states that in the wording of recommendation
So
2.1.
I'm just going to say it blatantly, but Wolverhampton vehicles can go forth and multiply.
This is for Portsmouth City Council
Thank
and
you.
licensed vehicles.
That makes me happy. we've got obviously 53 bus lanes in the city. We've only chosen 5 of them. I think that's a small number. I'm not going to ask you to list all 48 because I don't think we're going to be here all day. What I would like after this meeting is just a breakdown of those 48 sent out to myself, Councillor Heaney and Councillor Stagg, just so we can actually have an understanding about why they weren't chosen and why they weren't taken forward. I just think that that would be good for us to know why. And when obviously we have drivers approach us, and the Cycle Forum, for example, they're going to want to know why certain lanes weren't picked. And I think that's only fair to the people that are coming here today and asking those questions. Would anyone be able to obtain that for me?
Yes, that's fine.
Is that fine?
That's fine.
Thank you.
So we have a list of the bus lanes that weren't chosen and reasons behind that.
Okay, I'm going to make a point as well that there's only one bus lane off the island being used, which I do see as a bit of, I'm a councillor up in the north of the city, not off the island, but we have some councillors that are off the island, and so does Councillor Heaney now as well, where obviously we have drivers who live and operate up there, and there's only one, which is Cavill Drive, which is a small lane to be used. I just want to know that, for example, why Northern Road wasn't picked, because I think that is a good choice. I mean, it's a to and fro to the hospital. You know, people coming back into the city. It hasn't been chosen. I think people would want to know why, especially people that live off the island. I suspect that's a question for you, Paul, more than anyone.
So again, this bus lane was originally discounted because of the lack of available monitoring equipment. So this initial trial, there's been a focus on monitoring of the impacts of the trial along with safety being a key.
So it's purely because we can't monitor it. That is why we can't do Northern Road.
So the original, to try and cut down on how many bus lanes we were originally reviewing, we originally just shortlisted all of the ones that have some form of available monitoring equipment, whether that was enforcement cameras where we can monitor confusion, whether there was any data available that we could use, or whether there was they were on Bluetooth journey time monitoring routes.
Okay, thank you, Liam. I appreciate that. 2.4. I mean, Mr. Dobson's got his hand up. I'm quite happy to give way if you want to say something. If you really want to, Chair, I'm allowed. I'm not.
I'll interrupt you. Don't worry if I need to.
Okay. I'll carry on. I mean, we can talk about it afterwards, Mike, if you want to. I'm open. Okay. 2.4 notes obviously the consultation and engagement will continue with the licensing group and working committee. I mean, as the chair of licensing, I met with my vice chair yesterday. We welcome that to continue, so thank you. What I will add is, as the vice chair and the chair, should we say, can we be added to the working group as well? I think that would be good to feed into the thing. And I also think, to make it a really cross-party affair, would Councillor Heaney be invited as well? Because I think that would give an indication of what's going on, if you would allow that, as the cabinet member.
I have no problem with that at all.
Okay, thank you. I think that would just make things a bit more connective, and I think it will touch on the work that Erica's been doing for the last 18 months with the PHV trade, who I think a lot of her now. So I think that's very important to continue that. 2.5 of the report says it's going to be brought back within 6 months. I mean, the trial says it's going to be beginning in October, so that means the report will be coming back in March. Can you confirm that for me? Because it can't come back in April.
Paul.
I think the pertinent bit there is saying within the 6 months, so we're making a commitment that once the trial starts, as I said, we'll get some meaningful data come back with an interim report, but then actually within 6 months of the trial starting, at any point before that, we would, when we think the time is right and we've got enough data and a clear way forward, then we would come back with recommendations.
My concerns about this, Paul, is that it's going to get kicked into the long grass, into Purda. And I don't want that to happen, because I think it's disrespectful to the PHV trade, it's disrespectful to the Cycle Forum, it's disrespectful to the bus companies. They need to know what we're doing. So if we can have a commitment that would come back before Purda, I'd be really appreciative, Chair.
I think we'll just play it by ear.
I'm just trying to get for everyone. I think we've had someone who's really for it and someone who's really against it here, and they both want to have an idea of where the city council is going. And I think before we get into Purda in March would be the right time to do it, and that would be within the 6 months.
That's.
You happy with that?
Yeah, I'm fine. Happy
Brilliant.
with that.
Put that in the
We
minutes,
don't
Jane.
want to preempt anything. This is why it's a trial.
Absolutely, this is what I'm saying. But we want to get the data in. So I'm going to move on to.
People would like to, I'm sure, know where we are in a maximum of 6 months' time.
Yeah, I just want to know, on 3.7 of the report, it was mentioned about the setup of the group of stakeholders and being consulted as part of the trial, an assessment of the bus lanes put forward for the trial and road safety audits. do we actually have a list of the stakeholders who were offered to attend? Because there's been some confusion about who was offered and who wasn't.
Erica.
I don't have the list, but I'm sure I can find it.
Can you circulate that, please,
Absolutely.
Erica? Thank you. It just so for us, and also it mentions about the PHV and Hackney trade, which I know you'll be able to answer this. It mentions Aquacar. Were Uber and Bolt invited as well as other operators?
Yes, absolutely.
All three operators were?
Yes, absolutely. And the main focus with Aqua was to provide data. Uber were also asked for data that could be used to assess the situation before the trial goes live, and they declined.
Okay, so Uber have declined the journey data, okay. That's fine. So obviously, what stakeholders raised concerns?
I wasn't involved in that process, but I understand it was obviously Mike Dobson, but I'm not sure of any others. That wasn't something I was involved in, I'm afraid. There might be somebody else can answer.
Felicity.
Yes, so we also have another written deputation today from Gosport Cycle as well. So there were 2 stakeholder objections to the last report that we brought in December.
So did the bus companies at all raise any concerns?
We've received nothing formally from the bus operators.
So they've made no representation at all about this issue of this trial?
No.
Okay. No, I think the only thing I'm going to add, Chair, is the only concerns. I mean, are we having comments or are we going to that after? Are we going to comments, Chair, or are you going to...
Sorry?
Are we going to have comments or questions?
Are there any more questions? I was reading the Gosport, Cycle Gosport deputation.
It's not as thorough as Mr Dobson's, I'll tell you that.
Pardon?
It's not as thorough as Mr Dobson's one.
Didn't understand that.
It's not thorough.
Right.
It's not as thorough.
Any comments? Right. Councillor Heaney. Have you any comments?
Thank you. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not overly enamoured by the fact that it's only 5 bus lanes, and that's me being strictly honest with everyone here. I've made my thoughts known to the officers already. I feel like this is doomed to fail, and I think it feels like that it's being deliberately set up to fail at the moment. And I say this from a point of the fact that we've had a full-scale trial, we've had an option down to 5, which seems like the minimal that we're going to do and we're going to offer. I don't think it's going to give us a sufficient data set. I think the data set's going to be very minute. It's not going to tell us about different areas of the city because it's focused right down in the south, apart from one area, which is Cavill Drive, which is a very small part of the city that what I would probably say that not many drivers will drive down. So it's going to give you, it's going to tell you everything you want to hear. It's not going to give you a full picture of what is actually going on out there and what is actually happening to drivers and what's happening with cyclists and what's happening with bus companies. So, yeah, I think, in all seriousness, Chair, I don't particularly, I like the fact that we're doing it. I like the fact that we're offering that bus lanes, but do I agree with the way we're doing it? Absolutely not.
Can I just put in here, I mean, we've agonised over this for a long time. It's not just been, nobody's just come up with, oh, let's do this and let's go ahead with it. But I think we all came to the conclusion it's better to do 5 lanes properly than 53 badly. And it is much, it's within our capabilities of monitoring 5 bus lanes. And they should, if PHV drivers drive, with care, etc., then there is not a problem, is there?
Just a quick one. We've got the licensing manager. How many fatalities have we had involving PHVs in the last 2 years?
I don't think in the last 2 years, Chair.
Scott, what's going on now? It'd be nice to come through the
safety.
chair.
We're talking about safety, and I just thought it'd be a quick question. We've got the licensing manager behind us who's just confirmed there's been no fatalities caused by a PHV driver in 2 years.
It's not just fatalities, is it? It's everything, and it's not just PHV drivers. We've had 10 fatalities in the city in the last last year, Paul. And I think you said that 9 of those, nothing to do with the infrastructure at all. It's just human error. So that can happen anywhere. So and the 10th one, I think, was somebody who had a heart attack, and so it's looking at everything, and it's better, as I say, to do 5 bus lanes properly than 53. I mean, don't get me wrong here. We're not against PHVs.
No, I know.
No, we're not.
No,
not at all. Just a minute, I'm speaking. We're not against PHVs. What we want is all vehicles, whatever they are, to be driven safely. And all pedestrians, cyclists, e-scooter riders, again, to ride them or walk safely. And that is the important thing. We've got to improve our road safety. So, I mean, if PHV drivers drive safely, we don't have a problem. Anyway. And I genuinely mean that. Scott, would you like to carry on?
I've got nothing else to add, Chair. I mean, the only thing I would say is, I know we mentioned about 53. If it had come back and it had been 20, I'd have been happy with that. You know, I think 5 is the minimal, and I don't like doing anything half baked. So I like to go and do it in a different way, and that's probably why I'm sat here and you're sat there.
Councillor Heaney.
Thank you. Just to explain for our audience who may not have seen one of these meetings before, Councillor Peterhouse and I actually don't have a part in the decision at all. We haven't got a vote here. We can't change the decision or vote on the decision or whatever. We can only express our views, and it will be up to Councillor Stagg, who's the Cabinet Member, to actually make the final decision. But we do get a chance to say things, and we hope sometimes we can influence what happens. I mean, I do agree with Councillor Peterhouse about some aspects of the trial, because when we had the briefing meeting on this and we saw the draft report, I too had some concerns about the scope of the trial, that maybe we should have had some slightly more representative routes within it that would have given a better coverage for this trial. But we are where we are, and I suppose a trial is better than no trial, and actually trying this out is probably the best way forward. I think the other concern I have is that the members of the Cycle Forum, and I've spoken to another one last night, do get very agitated about traffic issues, because people forget that we have one of the highest accident rates for cyclists in the city, and we don't have a proper interconnected set of cycle routes that people can use safely in this city. And until that happens, cyclists are going to have to use the road and share it with other vehicles. Our roads are narrow. They don't have necessarily very good cycle provision or separation, for very obvious reasons, because of the physical nature of the road system. So they do quite rightly get concerned when an area which they would have some leeway to use, like the bus lanes, then gets used by the vehicles. That's the concern they have. I don't think they dislike PHV drivers, but they're worried that the limited opportunities they have now for safer cycling are made even more limited. I have to say I fully accept the point that PHV drivers' livelihood depends on them being safe and good drivers. So they are not going to deliberately go out and try and cause problems. And anyone who is a bad driver will soon get stopped and lose their license, and that's right. So the other thing I'd just say as well is, on the consultation, I think given the nature of this issue and because it is divisive, it would have been helpful to involve the e-scooter company and the Cycle Forum a bit earlier in the consultations about the scheme, rather than drawing them in rather later, because I just think it would help understanding and acceptance about the way forward. So I would be happy to see the trial go ahead, and would await to see the results. And why I asked the question about how it would then proceed after that, I think we need to think about that as well, as what would happen after the trial and what the way forward after that would be. But that's obviously a debate for a bit later. So yes, I would support the trial.
Thank you. I agree with you about the cycle network, but I think you would agree with me as well. We are doing our very best to improve it. It's taking a long while because it costs money, and a heck of a lot of money, but we're working on two levels. There are the cycle lanes on the main roads, such as the Eastern Road cycle path, the east-west cycle route, and to the active travel one, but also quieter routes, which are one lot, for example, are going through Anchorage Park area down to Burfields Road, and then using the old bus lane down there. So we're trying to provide better infrastructure for cyclists. But that is going to take time. It's like everything. It's the amount of money, and B, it's the number of officers. And we are very, very short of officers. So I'll say that now. And I would stress that this is a trial. It's up to 18 months under an ETRO, and it's up to everybody who uses the roads and the bus lanes to drive, ride appropriately, appropriate speed, keep distance. The rules are there. They're simple to follow. You do get some people who do not follow them, and there's not an awful lot we can do about that. But if we can encourage people to drive and ride safely, properly, then we should be okay. So it is up to the PHV drivers. You know, I mean, I support you. But I appreciate that some of the, Mr. Dobson, I appreciate that some of the bus lanes are quite narrow. That's the nature of the city. So we have to do compromises on various parts of the system. So I'm afraid I'm not taking any more questions now, but we will be monitoring this thoroughly. This is why it's taken so long to actually get where we are, because we wanted, if you have a trial, you've got to have the information, what's the situation now before you actually go into a trial, which is why officers have been collecting data from people like the bus companies, the length of time it takes them to get from A to B. I know I live on Copner, or just off Copner Road, and I know the buses, often 3 come at the same time because they've been held up by traffic elsewhere. So we don't want to compromise that, because we're trying to get a load more people out of their cars and onto public transport or active transport such as cycles, which is why we are improving the cycle network. So I am in favour of this going ahead. It is a trial, and I stress this to PHV drivers, and please make note of it. Please drive carefully, and then your trial will succeed. Thank you. So I'm happy to go along with the recommendations, which are that I approve the trial to allow access to Portsmouth City Council licensed private hire vehicles to use a limited number of 5 bus lanes in Portsmouth for a minimum of 3 months, including Cavell Drive, Market Way, Mile End Road, Bishop Crispian Way and Queen Street. Delegated authority to immediately cease any or all of the 5 trial locations if safety issues become apparent, and that's very important. And delegates authority to the Director of Regeneration in consultation with the Cabinet Minister for Traffic and Transportation and Section 151 officer to release funding to undertake the monitoring and evaluation, very important things, this trial, as the details are developed. This will be funded from the parking reserve. I'm sorry about that, Kevin, but, you know, it has to come from the parking reserve. I note that consultation engagement will continue with the licensing committee and working group as the trial develops, and we've already agreed to extend the working group to cover as many people as possible. And note that a report will be brought back to Traffic and Transportation within 6 months. That doesn't mean to say it has to be in 6 months' time, but it's got to be within 6 months' time, the trial launch, to provide an update on the trial progression and the next steps. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your deputations. Thank you for your applause. Right, I think we're now going on to item number 3, yes, which is Pembroke Park. So who is going to present that? Is that Kevin? Right.
So just let everybody leave. Yeah, thank you. Item 3 presents the report on the proposed residence parking zone for Pembroke Park. Informal consultation was done in December 21, and of those who responded, 59% indicated that a residence parking zone would be useful. So we then went on to design a proposal. The feedback from the informal survey showed quite a wide range of people parking in the area, so it was proposed that there should be a permit zone between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Formal consultation was conducted between 25th of March and the 15th of April. The full feedback from that consultation is in the report, and it's important to consider each representation, but overall it shows that there's considerable support for the residence parking zone, and so we're recommending that it is implemented as advertised. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, what do you say, Nicholas? Yes, right, Jeffrey. Apologies.
Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to do your deputation?
I will. I'm making this deputation on behalf of my ward colleagues, as well as numerous residents who we've spoken to in Pembroke Park. We fully support the proposed KE zone extension. If I may, I would like to read out an email from one of the residents who sent this to us. And it starts, I'm in full support of the residents' parking zone. The introduction of an RPZ in Pembroke Park is long overdue and will be greatly appreciated by the vast majority of residents. Residents have made their opinion very clear by the overwhelming majority support published in the Council's report, with highly valid reasons for an RPZ introduction, plus bringing the area into alignment with the rest of Old Portsmouth. Unsurprisingly, the majority of objections are from the MOD occupants residing in Woodville Drive. Naturally, they have their concerns about their private parking areas, inverted commas, which they say may be affected by parking displacement. My understanding is that there has been extensive efforts made to engage with the MOD for a collaborative approach, which regrettably has proven to be futile. The MOD, DOI landowners have not engaged. One objection in the report accuses the survey process to discriminate against the MOD occupants in Woodville Drive. This is a bizarre accusation. Technically, the MOD occupants didn't require to be polled by Portsmouth City Council. When the council survey residents within a potential RPZ, residents who live adjacent to the proposed zone are not polled because, of course, they would often object. Therefore, it's pointless. It was a generous gesture by Portsmouth City Council to survey MOD and, in fact, very inclusive and non-discriminatory. Any parking concerns MOD residents have is a matter for their landlord alone to address. I'm disappointed for them that their landlord hasn't stepped up, but that shortfall must not hamper the clear directive from the majority of private residents to press on and install the zone. There has been more than ample time in this entire process of KE zone proposal with Stage 1, December 2021, for MOD personnel to seek support and request ways to protect their parking areas within Woodville Drive. The placement of RPZ signage, as stipulated in the council proposed plan, will surely deter non-residents from parking anywhere within the park area, thus inadvertently benefiting those occupants. The clear wishes of the majority of private homeowners living within private Pembroke Park have been recorded publicly, and I firmly believe the council should proceed at pace to install GE zone. Long-term parking, Isle of Wight commuter parking, tourist parking, beach visitors have been tolerated for too long, and enough is enough. Thank you for your time and patience. We look forward to the introduction of the scheme in response to the explicit wishes of the majority of residents in the proposed zone area. And that was the end from the resident.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Peter Harris, any questions?
No, I have no real question. I think the report is quite self-explanatory. We see a lot of these nowadays come to the committee. I think we pretty much have one once a month now. It seems like we're rolling them out quite quickly. So it seems like the predominantly the residents are in favour. So I'd just go ahead and make the decision. And I think we've addressed the MOD issue within the report. So,
well, maybe this will make them wake up a bit. Maybe it will make them wake up a bit. Councillor Heaney, any questions or comments?
Well, just to say, I'm assuming that it's down to the MOD to decide how they enforce the parking on the land that they own around those properties, and it's up to them to advertise whatever restrictions they want to impose, and presumably they'll have to employ some sort of contractors or whatever to enforce whatever they decide, so that will be how it will be dealt with, particularly if residents complain about non-resident vehicles parking there because they can't park in the new zone. So that will probably resolve itself at some point. But of course, it's not something we can make a decision on. We have to leave them. We have to leave them to do that. That's nothing we can help with. So again, yeah, I mean, the ward councillors are in favour, as I understand it, and the residents are in favour. There are one or two objections. I've read the objections, but I think the report covers all of that. So I'm fine with the report and its recommendations. Thank you.
Yes, there was somebody, I think, who was objecting to the timing, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. But I think that, I think I'm not mistaken, there are a variety of reasons why people park there. I mean, it's not just, I think the first residence parking zone in Portsmouth was in Old Portsmouth, and that was almost exclusively because people were leaving the cars there and going to the Isle of Wight from for the day, for a week, fortnight, etc. It's not just that one thing. People go to the shops, they go to the beach, and just tourism in general as well as and work. Am I right?
No, yes, that's dead right. I mean, there's people visiting the beach over a short period of time all day, as well as the claims that people leave their cars there when they go on the ferries for weeks on end. So that's why we need the long period to stop the short-term visitors as well as the long-term ones.
Right, I'm happy to accept the recommendations if I can find them. To approve the proposed KE Pembroke Park area parking zone under TRO 35/2022, and it is implemented as advertised. So you can tell your residents that they've got it. Okay, thank you. And now I think it's the last one, isn't it? It's the bike hire scheme. So who's going to be delivering that? Hi. Thank you.
So the purpose of this report is to supply further information to enable Portsmouth City Council to progress to launch a bike share scheme in summer of 2022 this year, funded through the Solent Future Transport Zone. In March 2020, Solent Transport was awarded £28.8 million from the DfT's Future Transport Zone programme to implement trials of innovative approaches to transport across the Solent area from 2020 to 2024, including a public bike share rental scheme. Solent Transport is well positioned to deliver a successful bike share scheme in the Solent, having launched and managed e-scooter rental trials in Portsmouth, Southampton and on the Isle of Wight, with anticipated similarities in management and delivery requirements. The procurement was run by Portsmouth City Council on behalf of Solent Transport. The recommendations are first the progress made in developing a bike share scheme. And then 2.2 is to approve Portsmouth City Council launching a bike share scheme this summer 2022, operated by Beryl, as Portsmouth's sole bike share operator for the contract's initial 2-year term until 30th of June 2024, pursuant to a call-off contract under the framework agreement for the provision of shared bike rental and associated micromobility services, Solent Region. The reasons for the recommendations are that Solent Transport's DfT proposal cited one model, suggesting the Solent has high potential for bike share, with Portsmouth ranking third most likely to support successful bike share out of the 380 local authorities, excluding London, in the UK. It stated that Portsmouth's flat topography, demographics and economics further build the business case for bike share in the city. The proposal noted that while private sector experiments could be forthcoming due to this market potential, drawbacks of launching a bike share scheme without government support could include increased theft and vandalism, cherry-picking the more profitable areas without consideration of the wider benefits that bike share can provide, and also undermining the FTZ Mobility as a Service project, which is also due to launch later this summer, with a significant travel option not available in the app. The aims of bike share will contribute to the Council's nitrogen dioxide plan to improve local air quality in the city. It also aligns with the Council's transport strategy, specifically objectives to prioritise walking and cycling, deliver cleaner air and making parking easier in residential areas by encouraging fewer vehicles and supporting shared transport modes. So that's all I have, so welcome to, I'll try to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have any deputations, do we, Jane? No, okay. Yes. Any questions? Councillor Heaney.
Yeah, I do have a few questions. Can I ask, what is the charge going to be for users of the bike hire scheme?
Gareth?
Yes, of course. It's so the charges that were put in the bids, which still need to be 100% confirmed, but we have no reason to believe it would be different. So there are various sort of bundles, kind of, if you think in terms of mobile phone tariffs and so forth, but the vast majority of people use pay as you ride, and it would be a £1 unlock fee and 5p per minute for pedal bikes, and then slightly more expensive for e-bikes, that's £1.50 unlock and 10p per minute.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes.
Go on.
In describing the way the scheme's going to operate, there's a launch phase, initial launch in July, and then the full scheme will operate in April. So, according to the report, paragraph 5.6, it says that the initial launch period up to between July and April will be 100 bikes, 100 pedal bikes, 100 e-bikes, and 38 docking stations. So, when can we anticipate this beginning? Because it clearly isn't going to start in July, because I don't know, have any of the docking stations been identified and agreed? When will we start actually hiring the bikes?
Gareth.
Yeah, very good question. You're quite right, of course, July isn't feasible at this point. We're still hoping for late August. If it does slide, it would be into September, no later. We've already been out on the street with Beryl. They were sort of willing to do that at risk ahead of it, today's meeting, to identify sites, looking particularly at some of the sites that are alongside the e-scooter rental possibilities. We're expecting that list to come over to us in the next few days, and then of course we can start to take it through the officers group, the Future Transport Zone Board, get it out to consultation so that we can get some of those sites installed in a matter of about 6 weeks or so. So that's our aim, and we're working hard to deliver it.
And is the process for agreeing these sites for docking stations the same as the scooter ones?
Essentially, yeah.
I don't know if anybody is going to or has had a chance to read any of the questions that the deputation has posed, because I was going to focus on a couple of them at least, which I would be interested to know the answers to. It says the e-scooter scheme currently surveys its users for feedback. Will this be undertaken by Beryl as part of the bike share scheme?
Yes, it will. I think it will be, as it has been with the e-scooters, Beryl will do their own surveys, and then we'll look to supplement that with council surveys where there's a need, and some of the questions that were raised in that deputation are exactly the kind of ones that we'll wanted to get some answers to.
Another question was about requesting locations for near misses or perceived danger by users to add to the near miss data that already exists, or will there be some sort of a link for these people using these bikes to report through the tool that we have now? I mean, will the company do it, or will users be able to do it? Will they still be able to report near misses on their hire bikes?
Yes, so I had, obviously we only got these sort of questions through in the last day or two, so I did have a quick look through all the sort of documentation, 300 plus pages of it. I don't think that Beryl does have its own near miss tool. We're meeting them tomorrow actually, so I can check. But of course, cycling safety is absolutely paramount to them as it is to us, and I'm sure that they would be happy to promote the council's near miss cycling tool if they don't have their own, and we'll make sure that all that information comes together.
There are a couple of questions about docking stations.
Can I just ask, we've got our own near miss. So will there be two operating? Will Beryl operate theirs as well as?
As I say, I don't believe that Beryl have their own anyway, but if they do, then we'll make sure that the two pools of information get gathered together.
Thanks. Yeah. Yes. Sorry, Graham.
No, that's okay. I'm clarifying a question. The other question was about whether the scheme will collect data on, anonymised data on journeys of the cyclists to create some sort of map of the roads used by the hire bikes. Will that be possible?
Yes, absolutely. That was a core part of the tender, invitation to tender, was that, we wanted a bike share provider that was going to be sharing all of that data so that transport planning colleagues could use that again to help with safety and, all sorts of other bike parking provision and so forth. So, yeah, absolutely. And it will be, as you say, anonymised as well for data protection reasons.
And we're sort of connected with that. The last question was about how the council will be measuring and evaluating whether the bike hire scheme has contributed to a general increase in the number of people cycling. So how will we monitor this usage to show what the impact on cycle usage is?
So I had a good think about that.
Can you put your mic on, please? Is it on? I didn't.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. Sorry, maybe I'm not quite as close to the microphone as I should have been. So I did have a good think about that one. I think it's often quite difficult to establish causality. So, we could see a huge increase, let's hope, in cycling numbers in the next couple of years, and to attribute that to a particular thing it would be hard. But what we can do is in some of those surveys, in the monitoring and evaluation, we can look at things like if somebody didn't cycle before the scheme was in Portsmouth, and now they do, that's obviously a sort of win. Also, there is some evidence that people will use a bike share scheme as well as using their own bike, so it's not an either or. So we can look at whether people who are using bike share are cycling more than they used to, and also whether people who didn't have a bike, they get into cycling through bike share, they go out and buy one, so then they'll use it even more. So we can look at a lot of things that contribute towards increases in cycling, but not necessarily establish that direct relationship.
My final question is really about the future. The trial's for 2 years, which is fine, but what planning are we doing, financial otherwise, for picking up the scheme after that? I think the suggestion was, when I asked the question last time at the briefing, was that we'd wait for government to come up with some money, but I suspect in 2024 they'll be looking for tax cuts rather than funding bike schemes. So we really seriously have to think about prioritising this, because to bring it in and then to take it away because we haven't got the money would look really stupid.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's something else that's been, I think, sort of paramount throughout for Portsmouth City Council and for Solent Transport, wanting to make sure that this isn't, a great trial that everybody loves for 2 years and then it's taken away. I think the bike share scheme, more than all other aspects of the future transport zone, is something that we know can work. We've seen it work, and we want to make sure we're leaving a sort of a fantastic scheme for at least the next generation. So one of the key things we were looking at, of course, with our finance colleagues was the business model, making sure that it's often the first year or two that are quite difficult for bike share providers, because of course they've got all of the outgoing costs, but they haven't got the ridership base and the sort of the income and some of the economies of scale. So the idea of the future transport zone funding is to get them through that kind of phase as they build towards maturity, so that then it will be able to wash its own face, to use that sort of well-coined expression, for the years that come afterwards. So we'll be continuing to monitor that closely with them, and of course act in partnership to make sure that is indeed the case.
Is that all, Graham? Okay, thank you. Scott.
I mean, Councillor Heaney made reference to tax cuts in 2024. I really hope so. I'd be delighted for some tax cuts. It'd be great. I think we need some help at the moment. I think it's a really good report. I think what we're trying to do is sensible. So I think the officers pushed something to us that is really good. Just a few questions, really. And it's more so about how this is going to compete with Voi, because I think that's quite an important thing. They're going to have effectively two things doing the same thing, but they're different mode of travel. So what is the comparative cost between I know Councillor Heaney mentioned about charges. What's the cost between getting a Voi, unlocking it, and then unlocking a bike?
Yeah, that was actually one of the questions in the deputation as well, so I did look to make sure I had that to hand.
That's partly one of the reasons I asked, because I know it's a question that's been asked.
So let me just scroll. It's here we go. Yeah, so the Voi rental e-scooters are £1 to unlock, and then 20p per minute of usage, and so essentially what that means is that an e-bike is going to be broadly similar. It's because the unlock fee is a little higher, but then the per minute fee is a little lower, whereas pedal bikes will be cheaper than the e-scooter service.
Okay, it's interesting. I mean, I make this comment because I think we're going to have some joint docking stations in place where you're going to rock up and there's going to be a scooter and there's going to be a bike and there's going to be an e-bike. So you've got what I'd call proper choice, which I think is actually a good thing. And I think interesting as part of the data set and the comparative data would be to compare what people are actually getting from that area, because I think we can actually find out in that area, are people getting their bikes? Are they getting on an e-bike? Are they getting on a scooter? And I think it would really shape our transport strategy going forward. So I don't know if that's something that you'd want to take away from this, and I think it's just an idea, Chair, that I've just put down there because, we might find out that actually no one really likes the e-bikes, and they all prefer the e-scooters. or they might actually prefer the pedal bikes. I mean, and we don't know until we do these things. I think the 2-year trial is sufficient as well. So no, that's all I've got, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, can I ask? Well, yeah, I will ask. I'm allowed to ask them. Will Beryl do any training in inverted commas? A bit like Voi do, you can have a go on the scooters, because there may well be some, rookie cyclists coming along and need a bit of confidence. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's. I think it'll be along quite similar lines to the Voi ones, where it's something that we're still looking at the details of that. We spoke with the university, who are quite keen to have one for their freshers, especially noting that some of them maybe come from countries where cycling infrastructure and rules are quite different and so forth. So yeah, absolutely on the cards, and we'll supply some further details as soon as we have them.
And what's the situation regarding helmets? Because it worries me a bit that, people, when they're hiring, are not necessarily going to hire the helmet. And it's difficult for the companies because they could be nicked or damaged in some shape or form.
Yeah, again, I think it'll be along very similar lines to the Voi trials. So it's not going to be mandatory, but it will be strongly recommended, encouraged. There will be free helmets given out at some of those events I just mentioned. We'll also be having Beryl working with the council's comms team and Solent Transport's comms team to make sure that there are sort of media campaigns and in-app notifications reminding people not just of helmets, but also, like we did last winter, of making sure that you're visible in the sort of darker winter months and so forth. So yeah, absolutely high priority. Just like with the scooter scheme, we want to make it as safe as we possibly can do for the users and for non-users.
And are there any plans to work with the Cycle Forum, for example?
I think we would certainly always welcome all the input and feedback from a range of stakeholders, and particularly the Cycle Forum, who obviously you would expect would know more about cycling in this city than most. So, yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
It would certainly be nice to be consulted.
Pardon?
I said, Madam Chair, it would certainly be nice to be consulted.
Right, yes. Good. I'm pleased to see there's a docked system, a bit like the e-scooters, because the free-for-all ones that you get elsewhere just are not suitable for here with our narrow roads, etc. And can I thank you and all the team for all the work you've done, because this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? We started looking at bike hire quite a while ago, and then lots of things happened that didn't work out. So I'm really pleased that it's up and almost up running. So thank you. No more questions or comments? Okay, lovely. Well, I'm very happy to note the progress made. Very good, and approve the Portsmouth City Council launching a bike share rental scheme this summer, operated by Beryl, which it's operating right across the Solent region, isn't it? Because it's under Solent Transport.
That's right. It was the tender was run as two separate lots, one for Portsmouth, one for combined for Portsmouth and Southampton, and then one for the Isle of Wight. And Beryl have won all three, so they'll be doing bike share across the Solent. Yeah.
That's good to know as well. There's continuity. So yes, I'm really pleased with that. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.